This is Andy,
And this is Matt,
and you're listening to
the Hop Podcast with no name.
What a Dumb Name.
It's so stupid. Episode 73. We're back. We're back from our hiatus of the holiday season, and I learned a new trick, which is after 73 episodes, I found out that if I need to cough, there's a button next to me that I can press to mute my microphone. And so for 72 episodes, I have been red in the face for about 30% of them by the end of the episode.
I was like,
holding
how often
in
do you have to
coughs.
cough?
Often is the answer. And so I finally know. So this is a good day for me. And
Proud of you.
it was my Christmas gift. I found this out. So wait, before we jump in to the episode, you called me frantically this morning.
Panicked.
Because you received an advertisement before you could listen to our episode, which
I was trying to listen to it to remember what we said because it was weeks ago already. And I turned it on and there was another person talking and it wasn't me and it wasn't you. And I panicked.
Yep. A little bit of how the sausage gets made there. We listened to our own stuff to remember what we talked about. But we think we traced it back to what happened, and we think we removed it. This podcast, you and I agreed when we started recording it that it was always going to be ad-free. So that was unintentional. And if you hear them and you know us and can reach out to us, let us know.
Please.
We think we did everything we could to remove them, and they shouldn't be there. So we apologize if it threw you off, but that wasn't supposed to be there, and we are learning as we go. Better every day.
73 episodes that we're still, the learning curve. It's
There's a mute
slow.
button.
It's slow.
Wow.
It's slow.
All right, but back on track. We had established we were going to talk about complexity science.
Yes. And it has been several weeks since we recorded, and terrible time for us to take a break, really, because the best way to listen to these episodes would be one after each other. So at least there was only 2 weeks break between. But we didn't do that. So if you haven't listened to episode 72, is that right?
71.
Because we're on up. What?
71?
71?
Because 72.
We're on 72 right now?
No, oh my gosh. I would stop recording, but this is just very on brand, so I want everyone to hear it. No, 71 was a complexity episode. 72 was me wishing everybody a Happy New Year and letting them know that we were going to be.
So you can skip 72.
Yes.
But if you haven't listened to 71.
No, listen to it. I put the time and effort to wish everybody a Happy New Year's and Happy Holidays. There's genuine interaction there.
Perfect. So listen to both of them. But I suggest that you listen to part 1 of complexity before listening to part 2. I'll do my best to do a high-level summary. We talked about the difference between ordered systems and complex adaptive systems. And we used a little bit of a thought experiment to help people differentiate between how they might be thinking about the world around them, whether they're picturing living inside of a machine, which would be the ordered system piece, or they're picturing work being the complex adaptive system that it is. And from there, we wanted to be able to give some real examples. And we drew a couple mental pictures to call back on. If something fails within an ordered system, picture something mechanical, picture the failure being easy to recreate. Picture it being linear. So if you find one thing that failed, for example, I think we used a excavator and the bucket not working. If you picture the bucket not working, all you have to do is find one thing that stopped working within the excavator itself, and you can trace the whole line of failure, right? You can find the thing that failed because cause and effect, it's always fixed because we're dealing with Newtonian physics. That's the ordered system side. The mental image for complex adaptive system is different. We talked about weather as being a pretty good way of picturing it. But you're picturing standing in the middle of a perfect storm. So the ingredients for a really bad day can be swirling around somebody, and the person, the people, the adaptive part of the complex adaptive system we're trying to make it so that bad things don't happen on a it's continuously part of how we navigate the world. And so we are sometimes very consciously and sometimes unconsciously manipulating the variables around us to make it so bad things don't happen. And on days we're really tired, we had to work really, really hard to make sure that bad things didn't happen. And other times it's easier because the swirl of ingredients around us makes it a little bit easier to create a task or get something done without having to work incredibly hard to create success. That's my best attempt at a high level summary. Matthew, how did I do?
You did okay. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I was trying to think of a good representation of each.
Yeah.
And would you say that if we're thinking about an ordered system, if we imagine like a chain and one of the links breaking, are we going back to find the right link, fixing it, and the chain works again?
That's yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then depending on how complicated the chain is, right? It could be an engine, it could be a whole excavator, it could be anything, but we're still looking for the link that broke. And when we fix
Yes.
it, that chain works again, or that.
Actually, you could picture it as multiple links breaking. And you kind of only have to picture a branching chain. And all you got to do is find an area where there's multiple links broken. And then you're like, oh, this is the bad area. And then you fix the first one, and then the rest of them magically fix themselves.
I was hoping to do an example without magic, but that's fine. And then you had given sort of the perfect storm example as things all coupling and coming together for a complex adaptive system where it would fail that way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I think we did it better the first time. So you should listen to episode 71.
We did it longer. Did we do it better? That's for the listener to decide.
And then what we promised to do was to give an example of a complex adaptive system that wasn't weather related, and allow us to use that to then paint the picture of the from to, or the to from, meaning the argument that we're making here is if you picture the world around you as a machine, what you're interested in pre-event and post-event when bad things happen is incredibly different than what you'd be interested in if you're picturing the world around you as a complex adaptive system. And that a big part of what HOP is the switch in these mental pictures. And so we're going to do our best to describe it so that people can put themselves in this headspace when it's appropriate to do so. The example that we use in training to explain what it feels like to be navigating a complex adaptive system is having people picture their morning. And it's an analogy of work. So if you picture your morning routine, you have a goal. We're going to set that goal. The task you're trying to complete is getting to work on time in your morning. So picture a work day. And in order to do that, most of us have some sort of process, meaning we do things sequentially in order to try to get out the door. And we have done the best we know how to make that process seamless, right? So some people, set up their clothes the night before, or make sure that they've got coffee ready, or they do all of their prep for their kids' lunches the night before, or they change the type of alarm that they have. But we've done continuous improvement to our morning process in order to try to make your process, the best it can be to allow you to very consistently get to work on time. So that's the starting place. Fair enough, Matt. Am I missing anything?
So far, so good. I was just thinking
Okay.
about overnight oats and how grateful I am for them. Not the brand, the fact that this has become popular, that you can make oatmeal the night before. That's a whole set. We'll do a separate podcast if anyone wants to listen to that one about me talking about overnight oats.
Okay. So if that's our example of a complex adaptive system, then when we start to think about cause and effect, the model that we would be using for our morning doesn't really follow the mechanical system well. Meaning, if we picture an ordered system, right? We picture an engine. An engine can't function if the gears inside it are stripped. So if something breaks within the engine itself breaks down. But that's not true about our morning. if something breaks in our morning process, it doesn't necessarily mean that the output, which in this case we're defining as getting to work on time, it doesn't necessarily mean that that fails. What I mean by that is you could probably picture a version of your morning in which your alarm doesn't go off and you don't get to work on time. So your input, the alarm doesn't go off, the output, you don't get to work on time. But I'm also guessing you could picture a version of your morning in which your alarm doesn't go off and you do get to work on time. So now it's the same input, but a different output. Same thing.
I can just
yeah.
quick story, because this happened
Oh.
to me last night. I have been training myself to wake up earlier, and I have an alarm set for X time. I won't say it because people wake up way earlier than I do already. I don't want to embarrass
They're just going to judge you aggressively.
But I didn't realize. So my phone has this like reoccurring alarm that always gets off at the same goes off at the same time, and I didn't realize that for some reason it had turned off on Sundays. It wouldn't go off at that time, and so I had naturally woken up automatically, and I was holding my phone, looking at it, and I looked and it was 5 minutes past my alarm time. I was like, "Oh,
hey,
I'm already awake." So that's just my example. A good example of.
Yeah, the alarm didn't go off. You still woke up.
Still
on time.
woke up. I would have been able to get to work. Exactly, and that wouldn't have caused anything different in my day.
Right. So, I mean, that's one example. Now, if you picture all of the other variables that even make that example true, basically, did you sleep well the night before? Did you exercise? Is your body trying to repair itself? Are you a little bit sick? Like your sleep patterns are controlled and connected to a lot of other variables. But let's use another simple example. You could probably picture an example of your morning in which your car doesn't start and you don't get to work on time. But you could also picture a version of your morning in which your car doesn't start and you do get to work on time. And you could make that argument for most all of the things that a person would face in their morning. That one thing or a couple things can go kind of terribly wrong. And yet, because we have the ability to adapt as people, we can create a different path to success. So you can still get the same outcome, even if your inputs are starting to break and your normal process is breaking down. You also can make the argument that if you couldn't adapt, you probably wouldn't be able to get to work on time consistently. Meaning the number of different things you face in your morning that change from day to day is high enough that if you wrote a static procedure, right? You just wrote the procedure of do A, B, C, D, E, and F to get out the door, that would apply sometimes, but not all the time. And sometimes you'd have to change something in order to be able to get out the door on time. And the more variable your morning is, or the more variable your process is, the more variables you have to face, the more you have to be able to adapt to those changing variables in real time. People who have young children can absolutely understand what that looks like in real time in the morning, because the children themselves become the creator of lots of variability in the morning. A lot of it is hard to predict. Simple example, you might wake up one morning and if you have a young child, they just no longer like clothing. Like clothing was fine yesterday and this morning clothing is not okay. Or they generally would eat breakfast and then the next morning breakfast is not something they're interested in, or they just refuse to wear shoes. I mean, you could go on.
Yeah, having babysat your children, I can tell you that is accurate. But I have a solution for you. I found that if I cried in the morning a lot, they would feel it would throw off their own rhythm, that they would just do everything I asked them to do. And that was my, so if I cried a bunch, they'd be like, oh, okay, Uncle Matt's losing it. I gotta get my shoes on here.
So
that's a joke. Don't manipulate children by crying. Just a side note.
clarifying. This is not. Okay. So all of this to say that the process of getting to work actually represents a complex adaptive system in which your ability to be successful will require some amount of adaptation, but also because of your ability to adapt, your inputs can change and not necessarily be great inputs, and you can still create a good output. That becomes incredibly important to understand, because the bad ingredients of your day can exist simultaneously with a good output. And when you translate that into the work world, what that means is that a green metric, whether we call this hey, we're creating quality product, we had a day in which all of our product met specifications, and so we're going to call it a green day from the quality standpoint. Or you picture it from a safety perspective or an environmental perspective. Hey, we didn't have any injuries, we didn't have any environmental releases today. It's green.
I think
That's the output.
Bob Edwards has a story about someone having their best production day ever.
Best production day ever.
And yep. It actually, the inputs to get there, maybe,
or it makes for a really great story, which you can imagine how bad they must be to make for a really great story of how bad the inputs are. So the outputs can be green and the inputs can be green or not. They can be terrible. They can be yellow. They can be whatever color you want, and they can change from day to day. And that is incredibly important to understand for a few reasons. One, green doesn't necessarily mean success when we're talking about a complex adaptive system. People can be working with pretty poor inputs and still create that great output. And it's only a matter of time before those poor inputs catch up to us. Meaning the reason we're getting a green output, if you picture your morning, is the ability for you to adapt in real time to create success. Now, you take a person who's really good at adapting in real time to create success, and you do that long enough and the inputs are still pretty crummy, there's going to be a day in which you're just not on your game, for lack of a better way of saying it, and you're not going to be able to create success. The inputs themselves haven't changed very much, just your ability to adapt to them in a given moment in time, maybe because there was a slight variation, maybe because you're a little bit more tired, maybe because your attention is drawn somewhere else. Your ability to adapt in that moment isn't good enough comparatively to what you've done in the past. So that's how you can get to a situation in which you have, for example, a very experienced individual working in and doing work that they've done routinely before, and suddenly there's a really bad day, and it doesn't really feel like much has changed about the work itself, except the person's ability to adapt in that moment perhaps was a little bit different than they were before. So that's incredibly important. Matthew's raising his hand. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Matthew. Yep.
You had said something, and I think it's important to call out because I
said something important.
No. You actually said something that I want you to clarify because I'm worried that it could be heard the wrong way.
Yes.
Which was, you used the phrase.
I said something poorly.
No. We'll see. You used the phrase our ability to adapt or not adapt could catch up to us. And I think that could be interpreted as when we take shortcuts in our work, if we keep taking shortcuts, it's going to catch up to us and cause something bad to happen. And I know that's not what you meant. That's not to say that shortcuts can't compound. That's a separate conversation. But in this situation, that's not what you were saying. So I just wanted to let you clarify that for a second, because I think it's a huge distinction between looking at people doing the work and saying, well, because you're taking a shortcut, we had X outcome. And you've been taking them for a long time, and that finally caught up to us. That's not what you're saying.
Which is not what I'm saying. Yeah. What I'm saying is that when you have inputs into your process that aren't ideal, that people are continuously working around and adapting to, that all of our humanity means that we can't always do the same thing the same way every single time, even when we're trying to do the same thing the same way, or adapt in enough time, or have the presence of mind to be able to execute 3 things at the same time. Just the general variation of our ability to process inputs as a person eventually is going to make it so that those bad inputs come together in a pretty bad way. Or, Matt, it might have very little to do with us as a person, meaning there's a chance that swirl of stuff around us that can cause a really bad day, we just wouldn't have the capacity or ability, any human wouldn't have the capacity or ability to make it so the bad day doesn't happen, right? That's also a possibility in this complex adaptive system that we're trying to picture. Did I do a better job?
That's better. Yeah.
All right.
We can't expect the human to be so exceptionally amazing all the time. They're humans, right? They're going to be great days and okay days and some bad days and everything in between. And that's just part of humanity, no matter how much we don't like it and expect them to be perfect all the time.
Yeah. we are part of the variability, but we're also part of the adaptation. We are, I think Todd Conklin has said this before, we are the most important safety feature and also simultaneously the least reliable safety feature of anything. And those two things are true in tandem. It's very, very hard for us to create anything that doesn't require any amount of adaptation, which means that we are imperatively required to be part of the process in order to create that adaptation. But also, we are not perfect. We're not omniscient. We can't see every variable as it's coming towards us. We don't always use the right mental models for things. And because of that, we also are part of the variability that can create the bad day. We create the good days and we create the bad days and everything in between.
So what I'm hearing 20 minutes into this episode is that people are good. Failure is not linear. It's
Yeah.
a combination of normal variability, and you should go learn about it.
Yeah, that's a really good summary. Yeah. Yeah. Why that becomes so important to understand and to picture is because it dramatically changes what we think is important to learn about and what we think is important to improve in any circumstance. If we are picturing the world around us as a machine, when something bad happens, the tendency is to want to find that area where there's broken chain, fix the last piece of that chain. We call it usually the root cause, and then imagine that it's always going to work again until something else breaks. So we have a whole lot of emphasis on the idea of preventing breaking of the chain and making the chains themselves stronger so that they don't break as often. And then we also have this mental picture that once we fix the one or two things, that everything is going to function properly. If we scrap that mental image and instead we picture our morning, in which there's some things that we have control over in terms of our process, some things are variable just because of the nature of the world around us. And we are working really hard to create success, and getting to work on time doesn't necessarily mean that the entire process of getting to work ran well, smoothly, or that the person didn't have to work really hard to create that moment of success in time. When we picture it that way, we are far more interested in understanding what we would call normal work, regular work. Normal not meaning everything's going well, normal meaning what does it actually take to get to work? And how does it look different from day to day? And if I was new to your process of getting to work, where would be the places that would be easiest for me to make an error? And what are you most concerned about when you're trying to get to work? Those questions become important, and hopefully you can easily translate them into the work world. If we're talking about any work process, they become important in picturing basically the storm that people are standing in the middle of in order to get a process done. And why we want to be able to picture it is for two reasons. One, sometimes we have control over the variables that are cruddy, meaning if our car is not working, we can get a better car, right? That's one of the variables we gave in that example. If our alarm isn't consistently working, we might be able to get a better alarm.
I think we should just specify we have the decision rights. We don't always have the resources of people to get a better car, but we have the decision rights if we could to get a better
Correct.
car. That's
yes.
Yeah.
And in this analogy of it being a work environment, right? The organization itself, somewhere in the organization, you have people that have some amount of decision rights or resourcing to make those changes. So if we understand the perfect storm that's swirling around people, or those ingredients for the perfect storm, some of them have the ability to tangibly change. We can change them. And to your point, Matt, maybe actually, right? Or maybe wishful thinking, it feels like a silver bullet solution that we don't have resourcing for in this moment in time. And then the other piece of the puzzle is that when we can see how hard it is to create success, it becomes a lot more obvious that we would need to prepare for when the storm hits. And that's what we talk about in this idea of mitigation. When we start to say, oh man, there's a lot of different ways, for example, you can't get to work on time. It's not just one link in a chain. It's not just one series of events that can happen. There's a whole lot of different ways. There's a whole lot of different things you're dealing with. Translate that into any process that we're dealing with. When you can see how many different pathways there are to a really bad day, you very logically start to think we have to prepare for when this really bad day happens, which means we don't just focus on prevention, we also focus on mitigation. And that
Not if,
changes
but
tangibly
when.
the types of solutions we're putting in. What am I missing, Matt?
I just said not if, but when.
Yeah, not if, but when. So
Really
that is,
channeling my inner Bob Edwards today.
and your inner Todd Conklin. I think Matt, maybe we give people a tiny bit of homework and then wrap up. What do you think?
Back by popular demand.
Yeah. And by popular demand, I mean a lot of people being kind of mad at us that we stopped giving homework. So
Yeah, I can tell you that in my lifetime, that has never been the case for me, that I've been disappointed I didn't have homework. But hey, teach their own.
Okay. In order to try to make it so that this idea of complex adaptive systems and this mental model of these ingredients swirling around somebody and that being part of regular work, that not being this anomaly that happens every once in a while or happens just on a bad day, what we're suggesting is that take an event that you've had in your organization that you feel like there was a pretty good investigation done.
So you're less concerned about severity here and more just about thoroughness of
correct
investigation.
Thoroughness of learning, thoroughness of understanding what was going on before the event happened, in the process itself. And it doesn't matter. It could be safety related, quality related, output. It doesn't matter what type of investigation it is. And then try to list out, from reading through the investigations, the variables, the things that, I think Dr. Conklin says it this way, the conditions that had to be true for the event to happen. And why that's a useful labeling, at least for me, is you don't get stuck on, is this, an immediate cause, or this is a intermediate cause, or this is a contributing factor. It's just what at that moment in time. So picture the storm came together. What were those ingredients, those conditions that had to be present for this bad thing to happen? And then look at each of them and make an assessment as to whether or not those are regular, normal things. And what I mean by regular and normal is, have they existed before? Did they exist for a while? Are they transient, but they come up fairly routinely? Like it happened at that moment in time, but it's happened before and it'll probably happen again. And the point of doing this is to see how much of the events that we deal with are actually made up of really regular things that people are already facing or are normal to the human condition before the event occurs. And once we can get that solidified in our mind, our desire to learn proactively skyrockets, because it doesn't feel like we have to wait for a bad day to happen. We picture people walking around with a swirl of variables around them that they can teach us about if we ask questions, and we might have the ability to improve some of them, or at bare minimum, we might be able to mitigate for when that really bad day does happen surrounding that task, that process, and the people that are in it.
So do your homework. And I don't
completely voluntary homework that you don't have to do, but maybe
you asked for in most of the cases that we've heard. So I don't think we're done with complexity. I don't think so. I mean,
we're going to find out. We're going to listen to it again, Matt. We're going to find out if we're done with it or not.
If anything, we'll give a recap if we feel like we're done with it next episode. We'll kind of summarize it. And then we'll move on to the next piece. But I think that's it. It was a long one. It's going to be 30 minutes long. Sorry. Or you're welcome, depending on how you feel about the episode. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk again soon.
Well, that's it.
Yep. Another one in the books. We did it.
If you want to send us any of your thoughts, actually fling us any of your thoughts, you can do so at the website hoppodcast.com.
That's HOPPODCAST.com.
It's still such a stupid name.
It's such a stupid name. We look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening.